If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more compelling narratives that explore the complexities of family dynamics and personal growth. Now, let's dive into Sierra's world. The smell of antiseptic clung to Sierra Bennett's scrubs as she switched off the lights in her physical therapy clinic. 11 p.m. on a Friday, and she was the last to leave. Again. She massaged her temples, fighting the headache that threatened to overwhelm her. Outside the window of healing hands, Denver's skyline twinkled against the night sky, oblivious to her exhaustion. Her phone buzzed for the third time that evening. Mom again. Sierra let it go to voicemail, knowing exactly what the message would contain. Another reminder about Sunday dinner. Another subtle dig about how she never made time for family. Another comparison to Autumn, who always manages to show up despite her busy schedule. Sierra's eyes drifted to the framed doctorate from Colorado State University hanging on her office wall. 6 years of sleepless nights, of declining invitations, of explaining to her family why she couldn't attend Autumn's art exhibitions or help plan her sister's birthday parties. 6 years of her mother saying, "Your sister needs our support in her creative journey. You've always been the independent one." Independence. That word had become both her armor and her prison. Sierra sank onto the treatment table, the same one she'd slept on for 3 months when she couldn't afford both rent and malpractice insurance after opening her clinic. She ran her fingers along the smooth surface, remembering the ache in her back, the quiet tears shed in darkness when no one could see her struggle. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a text from her father. "Your mother's making pot roast Sunday. Autumn has exciting news. Don't disappoint us." Sierra closed her eyes, her chest tight with a familiar pressure. What would they say if they knew she'd just signed a management services agreement with Colorado Healthcare Partners? After 5 years of building her practice from nothing, literally sleeping on these tables, she'd finally achieved what seemed impossible. But experience had taught her that her victories were never celebrated with the same enthusiasm as Autumn's smallest achievements. Sierra pushed herself up. Tomorrow would be another 12-hour day. She grabbed her keys and stepped into the cool night air, locking the door to her sanctuary, the only place where her worth wasn't measured against her sister's. The Sunday afternoon sun streamed through the windows of her parents' suburban home as Sierra parked her Honda Civic in the driveway. She'd chosen the practical car despite finally being able to afford something nicer, a habit of frugality born from years of counting every penny to keep her clinic afloat. She checked her reflection in the rearview mirror, tucking a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. At 34, fine lines had begun to appear around her eyes, evidence of countless nights spent poring over patient files and business ledgers. The front door opened before she reached it. Her mother, Ellen Bennett, stood with arms outstretched, her smile warm but her eyes already looking past Sierra toward the street. "We thought you might not come," Ellen said, embracing her briefly. "Autumn's been here since breakfast helping with the meal." Sierra bit back the reminder that she'd spent the morning treating an elderly stroke patient who couldn't afford to miss his session. Instead, she handed over the bottle of wine she'd brought, a small luxury from her first month of actual profit. "Just a little something," Sierra said. "Oh, how thoughtful," her mother replied, setting it aside without examining the label. "Autumn brought that painting we've been admiring for the dining room. Wait until you see it." The house smelled of pot roast and fresh-baked rolls, sense of a childhood when Sierra had believed her accomplishments mattered equally to her sisters. She followed her mother through the living room, where her father, Richard, sat watching football. "There she is," he said, lifting his beer in greeting but not rising. "The doctor is in." Sierra returned his smile, used to the way he referred to her title, not with pride, but with a subtle mockery, as though her doctorate in physical therapy was a pretension rather than an achievement that had cost her $187,000 in student loans. In the dining room, Autumn Bennett was arranging flowers in a vase. At 30, she was still the golden child, her blonde hair catching the light, her smile radiant as she turned to her sister. "Sierra, finally!" Autumn rushed forward, enveloping Sierra in a hug that smelled of expensive perfume. "I've been dying to tell you my news." Sierra returned the embrace, noting the designer watch on her sister's wrist. a stark contrast to the simple timepiece she wore to time her patients' exercises. "Let's eat first," Ellen called from the kitchen. "Everything's ready." They gathered around the table, Richard at the head, Ellen at the foot, the sisters facing each other across the middle. Grace was said, food was passed, and Sierra braced herself for the inevitable interrogation about her work, her love life, her failure to visit more often. Instead, her father cleared his throat and looked meaningfully at Autumn. "Your sister has something to share," he said, his face alight with a pride Sierra couldn't remember ever being directed at her. Autumn clasped her hands together. "I've been thinking a lot about next steps in my career," she began, "and I've realized that what I really want is to put my organizational skills to good use. So," she paused dramatically, "I've decided to come work with you at Healing Hands." Sierra's fork clattered against her plate. "What? Isn't it perfect?" Ellen beamed. "You've been working so hard, and now Autumn can help lighten the load. She'll be your practice manager." Sierra looked from her mother to her sister to her father, searching their faces for any sign that this was a joke. There was none. "I don't need a practice manager," she said carefully. "I've been running things on my own for 5 years. And that's why you're always so tired and never have time for family," her father interjected. "Autumn has a gift for management. Remember how she organized that charity art show last year?" Sierra remembered. She also remembered providing free physical therapy services to 5 of the participants at Autumn's request, services worth over $4,000 that had never been acknowledged or reimbursed. "We've got it all figured out," Autumn continued, oblivious to Sierra's stunned expression. "I'll handle the business side, scheduling, marketing, all that boring stuff, and you can focus on the patients. I'm thinking a 25% share of the profits would be fair, since I'll be bringing in so many new clients through my connections." Sierra felt her throat constrict, her pulse pounding in her ears. 25%? Without any investment? Without any qualifications or experience in healthcare administration? "Now, Sierra," her mother soothed. "Don't be selfish. Your sister is offering to help you." "Help me?" Sierra's voice rose slightly. "The last time Autumn helped at my clinic, she lost $42,000 in missed insurance filings because she couldn't be bothered to learn the system before reorganizing it." A heavy silence fell over the table. Sierra hadn't meant to bring up that disastrous 3-week period when Autumn had worked the front desk as a favor 2 years ago. But the memory of reconstructing patient records late into the night, of apologizing to insurance companies, of draining her emergency fund to cover expenses while waiting for delayed reimbursements, it all came flooding back. "That was a simple misunderstanding," Richard said dismissively. "Autumn's learned a lot since then." Sierra looked at her sister's confident smile and realized that this wasn't a spontaneous idea. This had been discussed, planned, and decided, without any input from her, the owner of the business they were so casually dividing. "I've actually signed an agreement with Colorado Healthcare Partners," Sierra said quietly. "They're providing management services for my clinic starting next month." 3 pairs of eyes stared at her in disbelief. "You didn't think to consult us before making such a big decision?" her father demanded. Sierra set down her napkin. "Why would I consult you about my business? None of you have invested a penny in it." "We've invested plenty," Ellen countered. "Emotional support, referrals." "Referrals?" Sierra couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. "Mom, the only time any of you refer patients to me is when you want me to treat your friends for free." The atmosphere in the dining room had shifted from celebratory to tense. Autumn's lower lip trembled slightly, a familiar precursor to tears that had always resulted in Sierra being cast as the villain. "I was only trying to help," Autumn said softly. "You're always working so hard, and I thought..." "You thought you could step in and claim 25% of what I've built," Sierra finished for her. "What exactly would you be bringing to the table, Autumn? Do you have any idea what it takes to run a healthcare practice? The regulations, the liability, the specialized knowledge?" "I have plenty of management experience," Autumn protested. "My art collective is not a business with employees and malpractice concerns," Sierra interrupted. She turned to her parents. "And you two encouraged this? Without once asking me if I needed or wanted a partner?" Richard's face reddened. We assumed you'd be grateful for the help. You're always complaining about how much work you have. I've never complained to any of you, Sierra said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. In fact, I've made a point of not burdening you with my struggles because every time I've tried, the conversation gets redirected to Autumn's latest crisis or achievement. Ellen reached across the table for Sierra's hand, but Sierra pulled away. That's not fair, honey. We've always supported both our girls equally. Sierra stood and walked to her purse, which hung on a chair in the corner. From it, she withdrew a folder. I knew this conversation was coming someday, she said, returning to the table. Not this specific conversation, but something like it. So I've kept records. She opened the folder and spread several documents in front of her parents. These are receipts for $42,735 in free treatments I've provided to family members, friends, and Autumn's associates over the past 5 years. She pointed to another paper. This is a list of every Sunday dinner, holiday gathering, and family event I've missed because I was working to build my practice, alongside the corresponding events of Autumn's that were deemed unmissable, requiring my presence despite my schedule. Sierra's hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained calm. And this, she said, tapping a final document, is a record of every time I've asked for help, from co-signing my business loan to simply having someone bring me dinner during that first year when I was sleeping at the clinic and been told that resources needed to go to Autumn first because her artistic temperament made her more vulnerable. The silence that followed was deafening. Autumn stared at the papers, her expression moving from shock to shame. Ellen's eyes filled with tears, while Richard examined his plate with sudden intense interest. I don't resent any of you, Sierra continued, her voice softening. I'm proud of what I've accomplished on my own, but I will not allow you to insert yourselves into my business now that it's successful. Claiming credit and profits for work you not only didn't support, but actively made more difficult. That's a terrible accusation. Her father finally sputtered. It's not an accusation, Dad. It's documentation. Sierra carefully returned the papers to her folder. I love you all, but this pattern stops today. My clinic is not a family resource to be divided up according to who needs what. It's my livelihood, built despite, not because of, my family's support. The remainder of the meal passed in uncomfortable silence. Sierra declined dessert, citing an early morning appointment, which was true, though not the real reason she couldn't stomach another hour at the table. As she gathered her things to leave, Autumn followed her to the door. I didn't realize, her sister said quietly, about all those things you wrote down, about how it looked from your perspective. Sierra paused, keys in hand. For the first time in years, she saw uncertainty in Autumn's eyes, not the practiced vulnerability that had so often manipulated their parents, but genuine self-doubt. I've always been proud of you, Sierra said. I never wanted less support for you, just some recognition that my path was also difficult and worthwhile. Autumn nodded, tears spilling onto her cheeks. I've taken you for granted. We all have. Sierra didn't deny it. If you're serious about wanting to work in healthcare administration, I can introduce you to some colleagues who might help you get proper training. But not at my clinic, Autumn. That's my space. Her sister wiped her eyes. I'd like that. The introduction, I mean. And I'm sorry, Sierra. Really sorry. For the first time in their adult lives, Sierra felt seen by her sister, not as the reliable one who needed nothing, but as a person with her own struggles and achievements. The drive back to her apartment was quiet, the radio off as Sierra processed the confrontation. She'd imagined versions of this conversation for years, but the reality had been both more painful and more liberating than expected. Her phone rang as she pulled into her parking space. Her mother. Sierra, Ellen's voice caught. Your father and I have been talking. Those papers you showed us. We had no idea we'd been so... I don't even know what to say. Sierra leaned back in her seat, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky. You don't have to say anything, Mom. I didn't bring those records to make you feel guilty. I just needed you to understand why your proposal today felt so unfair. We were wrong, Ellen admitted. And I'm not just saying that because you called us out. Seeing everything written down like that, It made me realize how we've treated your accomplishments as somehow less special than Autumn's. Sierra closed her eyes, unprepared for the validation she'd sought for so long. Maybe we could meet, she suggested. Just the two of us, somewhere neutral. There's a cafe downtown I like. I'd like that, her mother replied. And Sierra? Congratulations on your partnership with Colorado Healthcare. That's a big deal, isn't it? The simple acknowledgement brought unexpected tears to Sierra's eyes. Yes, she said. It is. 3 days later, Sierra sat across from her mother at Copperleaf Cafe in downtown Denver. The morning rush had subsided, leaving them in relative privacy at a corner table. Steam rose from their coffee cups as an awkward silence stretched between them. I brought something, Ellen finally said, reaching into her purse. She withdrew an envelope and slid it across the table. It's not enough, but it's a start. Sierra opened it to find a check for $42,735, the exact amount of free services she'd provided over the years. Mom, I didn't show you those records to get money. I know, Ellen replied, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be compensated for your work. Your father and I discussed it, and we agree this is the right thing to do. Sierra traced the edge of the check with her fingertip. Thank you. This will actually help a lot with some new equipment I've been wanting to purchase. Ellen smiled tentatively. Tell me about this partnership with Colorado Healthcare. How did it come about? For the next hour, Sierra found herself explaining the intricacies of her business to her mother, who listened with genuine interest. She described the management services agreement, how it would streamline her administrative burden while allowing her to maintain clinical autonomy, the expansion possibilities it created. You've built something remarkable, Ellen said when Sierra finished. I'm sorry we didn't recognize that sooner. Why didn't you? Sierra asked, the question she'd held back for years finally finding voice. Was it because physical therapy seemed less impressive than Autumn's artistic pursuits? Or because I didn't seem to need your approval as much? Ellen considered the question, her fingers wrapped around her coffee cup. I think, she began slowly, we fell into patterns without realizing it. Autumn was always more demonstrative. When she succeeded, she celebrated loudly. When she struggled, she let everyone know. You were quieter, more self-contained. We misinterpreted that as not needing recognition. She reached across the table to touch Sierra's hand. But that's an explanation, not an excuse. We should have seen how hard you were working, how much you were achieving. We should have celebrated your doctorate, your clinic opening, your business surviving that first difficult year. Sierra felt a knot in her throat loosen. Not completely, but enough to breathe more easily. I'd like to try again, Ellen continued. All of us. To be the family you deserve. Not to insert ourselves into your business, but to support you properly this time. I'd like that too, Sierra said. But it will take time to rebuild trust. Ellen nodded. We have time, and we're willing to do the work. As they prepared to leave, Ellen asked hesitantly, What about Autumn? Have you spoken to her since Sunday? We've texted, Sierra replied. She's looking into healthcare administration programs at Metro State. I've offered to let her shadow my office manager 1 day a week, as an unpaid intern with clear boundaries. That's generous of you, Sierra shrugged. It's not generosity so much as establishing a new kind of relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than old patterns. Outside the cafe, they hugged goodbye, a real embrace rather than the perfunctory one they'd exchanged at Sunday dinner. I'm proud of you, Sierra, Ellen said. Not just of what you've accomplished, but of who you are. I should have said that years ago, and I'll keep saying it now. Sierra watched her mother walk away, feeling lighter than she had in years. One conversation couldn't erase decades of imbalance, but it was a beginning. 6 months later, Sierra stood in the reception area of Healing Hands, which had been transformed by her partnership with Colorado Healthcare Partners. The waiting room now featured comfortable ergonomic chairs, a refreshment station, and a digital check-in system that had significantly reduced patient wait times. Through the large windows, she could see the Rocky Mountains in the distance, their peaks capped with early autumn snow. The view had always been there, but somehow it seemed more visible now, as if the clearing of her personal fog had sharpened her external vision as well. Her office manager, Denise, approached with a tablet in hand. "The scholarship committee has reviewed all the applications," she said. "They're ready for your final approval." Sierra smiled, taking the tablet. The Sierra Bennett Future Healers Scholarship was her newest initiative, a program to support physical therapy students struggling with the financial burden of education. Funded by a portion of her clinic's profits, it would provide $10,000 annually to 5 deserving students. She scrolled through the finalists, remembering her own desperate scramble for funding, the nights spent applying for every scholarship and grant available, the crushing weight of student loans that had followed her for years after graduation. "These look perfect," she said, approving the selections. "When can we notify them?" "I can send the emails today," Denise replied. "And we've scheduled the small reception for next month as you requested. Your family has confirmed they'll attend." Sierra nodded, a warm feeling spreading through her chest. The past 6 months had brought careful, meaningful changes in her family dynamics. Sunday dinners were now rotated between all their homes, including her apartment. Her parents had attended the clinic's partnership celebration, visibly proud as Sierra addressed the gathered healthcare professionals. Even Autumn had found her footing, enrolling in a healthcare administration certificate program and approaching her internship at Sierra's clinic with unprecedented diligence. The sisters were building a new relationship, not as competitors for parental attention, but as adults with different strengths and paths. Sierra's phone chimed with a text from her father. "Just got the invitation to your scholarship reception. Wouldn't miss it. So proud of what you're doing for these students." She texted back a simple, "Thank you," no longer needing to qualify or explain her feelings. Later that evening, after her last patient had left, Sierra sat at her desk reviewing the scholarship recipients' stories. Each one reminded her of some aspect of her own journey: the single mother balancing studies with childcare, the first-generation college student navigating academia without guidance, the career changer risking financial security to pursue a calling. She thought about the treatment table she'd slept on during those early months, the same table that now stood in one of 6 treatment rooms staffed by a team of skilled therapists. She thought about the lonely nights, the doubts, the determination that had carried her through when no one else seemed to notice her struggle. The growth of Healing Hands was her triumph, but the scholarship program was her legacy, a way to ensure that future physical therapists wouldn't have to choose between paying rent and maintaining malpractice insurance, between buying textbooks and eating proper meals. Sierra closed her laptop and gathered her things, ready to head home to an apartment she now had time to enjoy. As she locked the clinic door behind her, she felt not just the satisfaction of professional success, but the deeper peace of personal boundaries established and respected. The Denver skyline glittered before her, no longer indifferent to her exhaustion, but bearing witness to her achievement. Sierra Bennett, daughter, sister, doctor, business owner, mentor, stepped into the cool evening air, finally whole. If you've been moved by Sierra's journey of self-discovery and professional triumph, please subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that explore family dynamics, personal boundaries, and professional growth. Hit the like button if you've ever had to establish boundaries with loved ones, and share your own experiences in the comments below. Your story matters too.